Who is Breakbones, the Harwin Strong we never get to see in House of the Dragon? In George R.R. Martin's world, a knight's given name and house name are certainly important for matters of ceremony and inheritance, but the ones that people usually end up remembering are those who have distinguished themselves enough to earn a nickname.
Science again! Science again!
Lord as much.
Knights like Barristan the Bold and Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight have stood the trials of history and controversy to emerge as the true bastions of knighthood. Then you have knights whose nicknames remind you of their dishonor and deceit, like Lusamore the Lusty, a Kingsguard who sired 16 children, and Sir Jaime Lannister, whom people still call Kingslayer for breaking his oath and saving King's Landing from Aerys Targaryen and his wildfire plot.
This is the hand of the king.
Was the hand of the king. I'm not sure what he is. Lord of somewhere very far away.
When House of the Dragon was announced, we were excited to see another knight whose physical prowess was held in such high regard that men called him Breakbones. But alas, he died in episode 6 in a fire orchestrated by his own brother, and we never really got to see him in action, which begs the question, was that even the real Harwin Strong?
Terrible lack of respect.
A certain insolence runs in the family, I'm afraid.
The TV show's many time skips have given Sir Harwin the shortest end of the stick, so we're here to talk about the Harwin Strong you never got to see. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Enough! You dare put hands on me! They're gone!
He comes from a line of redoubtable knights, House Strong's legacy as fighters. One of the first things you will notice if you research the history of House Strong is the fact that every man who is mentioned by name in Westerosi histories is a knight. The first Strong to rise to prominence was Sir Osmond Strong, a knight who served as the fourth hand of the king to Aegon the Conqueror. King Aegon's first 3 hands had been men he had alighted upon to help him conquer the 7 kingdoms, whether it was with steel or fealty. His first hand, Orys Baratheon, was a fighter without an equal when he was in his prime, and Aegon's steadfast childhood friend and bastard brother, according to some. His second hand was Lord Edmund Tully, the new Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, who was the first to pledge fealty to Aegon when he arrived on Balerion's back to challenge Black Harren and House Horror. This third hand was Lord Alton Celtigar, a man who was sworn vassal of Dragonstone and from one of the 3 families in the 7 kingdoms who were descended from Old Valyria. The Celtigars were closer to House Targaryen than most noble houses in Westeros, though not as close as House Velaryon or House Baratheon, who share blood ties with the Dragon Lords. Sir Osmond took office when Lord Alton died, and was set to task with improving the defenses of Aegon's burgeoning capital city, after Aegon heard of an attack of the southern coast of Westeros. For its first decade or so of existence, the city of King's Landing was lightly fortified, with its walls playing a next to negligible role in its defense. The Dragon King's belief was that a city where dragons were often known to roost would not be one that people would even dare to attack. But after he heard of the sacking of Tall Trees Town, a major religious and financial hub of the Summer Isles, and realized that even their natural fortifications were not enough to hold pirates back, he commanded Osmond to raise the walls of King's Landing to a level where climbing them would mean certain death during a siege. Osmond oversaw this project, which went on for 6 years, and gave King's Landing its first proper major fortification. He also fought for his king just as Orys had, battling with the pirate king Sargoso San in 29 AC and 30 AC, alongside the Master of Ships, Aethan Velaryon, and Crown Prince Maegor Targaryen. Sir Osmond passed away in 34 AC, but his successors continued to raise House Strong's stock in the world. In 55 AC, Sir Lusamore Strong was renamed the replacement for Sir William the Wasp of the Kingsguard, after he had impressed King Jaehaerys with his victory at the Great Melee at the Dragon Pit. Sir Lusamore was a strapping, broad-shouldered man, often described as a blonde bull, whose strength was unparalleled even amongst the ranks of the Kingsguard. He served Jaehaerys faithfully for nearly 20 years, and it was during his time in the Kingsguard that his brother, Sir Bywin Strong, was named the Lord of Harrenhal, making House Strong one of the great houses of the 7 kingdoms. Bywin was granted Black Harren's seat, and all its income sometime at the beginning of or during the 73rd year after conquest. because towards the end of the year, an incident would take place which would have ensured he never got to that point in the first place. Sir Lusamore Strong was discovered to have married 3 women, none of whom knew about the other 2, and sired 16 children upon them, breaking 2 of his Kingsguard vows. He was brought before King Jaehaerys by Lord Commander Giles Morrigan, and he pleaded to be shown mercy. According to Septon Barth, who was serving as Jaehaerys' hand to the king at the time, the conciliator might have shown Lusamore a measure of mercy, had he not brought up his wives and children during his plea, which was tantamount to throwing his crimes in the king's face. He was gelded and sent to the Night's Watch, while his 3 wives and their children were sent off to Harrenhal, Driftmark, and Storm's End, respectively. Thereafter, Sir Lusamore Strong was remembered in song and the White Book of Brothers as Lusamore the Lusty. His story serves as an appetizer for Harwin's because both men share some core similarities, which we will discuss in a bit. But speaking of Harwin, it wasn't just him and his great-uncle Simon who were knights renowned for their name and strength. His father was one too. In fact, Lord Lionel looked so martial that people thought him only a dull brute, but he used his wits and his strong knowledge base to prove otherwise. Before he became a lord, he was Sir Lionel Strong, a faithful knight of the 7 kingdoms, and a man with a reputation for battling, but after earning 6 links of a maester's chain and being named Master of Laws by King Viserys Targaryen, he was known throughout the realms for his strong sense of justice. Famously, when Daemon Targaryen was accused of defiling Princess Rhaenyra, Lord Lionel, being the Lord Justiciar of the realm, suggested that he be executed for high treason. It was only thanks to Septon Eustace pointing out the fact that that would make Viserys a kinslayer, which stared at the headsman's axe. So we can deduce from these 3 well-known Strongs that the house itself had a 50-50 reputation, half martial and just and half mirrored by lust, and a 100% strike rate of producing big, strong, burly knights who are more than what they seem on the surface. And that is also the case for Lionel's first son from his first wife, who stood to inherit all that he had, though his transgressions led to the downfall of their entire house. The strongest knight in the 7 kingdoms, Sir Harwin Breakbones Strong. Sir Harwin Strong's first mention in Westerosi histories calls him one of the strongest men in the 7 kingdoms in this day, and we cannot see how that can be disputed. Every strongman whose description has been provided to us suggests that the family had a tendency to manifest immense physical traits in its male members. Given that we have never heard the description of a legitimate female Strong yet, Sir Osmond was never described, and neither was Sir Bywin, but Lusamore and Lionel are consistently described as having been bigger and stronger than most men in the realm, so much so that their natural disposition made them seem like lumbering brutes. But even when he was met with such high standards, Sir Harwin seemed determined to smash through the legacy of his forebears right from birth, as by the time he had reached adulthood and been knighted, he was called the strongest man in the 7 kingdoms, a nickname that has only ever been used in the main series to describe Sir Gregor Clegane. The mountain that rides is a freak, near 8 feet tall and weighing over 30 stones, all of it muscle. His raw physical strength is such that he can cut a man in half, and he wields a 6-foot-long greatsword with a single hand like it was a training sword made of wood. Though there is nothing in the histories to suggest that Harwin was nearly as big or exceptionally violent as Gregor is in the main story, but he is consistently described as being massive and redoubtable, which leads us to believe that he might be somewhere close to Sandor's size, which is not as imposing as Gregor's gigantic stature, but is still significant. Sandor Clegane is bigger than Jaime Lannister, Brienne of Tarth, and even King Robert Baratheon, all characters who are described time and over again as having been great fighters and warriors. The only people larger than Sandor are his brother, Lord Jon Umber of House Umber, and the simple-minded stable boy Hodor from Winterfell. It's likely that Sir Harwin Strong skewed towards Sandor, not Gregor, when it came to the height scale, but what matters is the fact that he had earned his nickname before reaching the royal court. We do not know when Harwin was born, when he was knighted, which wars he fought in, and how many tourneys he had won, but we do know that by the time he arrived in King's Landing in 105 AC, he was preceded by his reputation. Sir Harwin Strong was known all across the realm as Breakbones for his monstrous strength and immense size, and was widely considered to be the Gregor Clegane of his day, though the mountain would come into this world over a century after Breakbones' death. One can assume that his nickname stuck because he had a propensity for, you guessed it, breaking bones. After coming to the capital, he was sent to join the Goldcloaks Cloaks by his father, and Harwin did pretty well for himself. He rose through the ranks and became a captain in the City Watch, a respectable position for any man to hold, as the Gold Cloaks had not reached their infamous levels of corruption yet. He spent 7 years in the capital, familiarizing himself with its ins and outs, and all Kingslanders, be they highborn or lowborn. Harwin was known to enjoy his fill of mead in the city as much as he was known for breaking bones in the barracks or on the tourney field, and by the time 112 AC came around, he was well known enough to make a play for the throne.
We'll escort the lads.
Laenor and I thank you, Commander.
The father of 3 royal princes, how Harwin Breakbones became Rhaenyra's lover and the divider of the realm. Sir Harwin Strong was a formidable fighter and a trustworthy captain of the City Watch, and might have had a reputation as clear as his forebearer Osmond Strong had he kept himself on the path of honor. Instead, he followed in his other ancestor, Sir Lusamore Strong's footsteps, and ended up signing the death warrant for his entire house in the process. When Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen started her period of courtship and attended suitors from all across the realm, Breakbones was one of them. His position was a captain in the City Watch did not hinder his prospects as such, because he was, first and foremost, the son and heir of the Lord of Harrenhal. Harrenhal, despite being cursed, was still the greatest castle in the 7 Kingdoms, and its incomes were not inconsiderate. Marrying him would have been a decent enough political move for Rhaenyra, but given the fact that his father was a hand of the king at this point, and Lionel's predecessor was dismissed for rising above his post and attempting to meddle in the matter of succession, we can assume that he was passed over on account of his family's affiliations, and the fact that House Strong had only been raised to lordship 4 decades prior. Rhaenyra ended up rejecting offers from men who sat far higher on the political rung than Harwin, like Lords Tully and Tyrell's sons and heirs. In the year 111 AC, Prince Daemon Targaryen, the former commander of the City Watch, was exiled from the 7 Kingdoms after an incident where it is alleged by multiple sources that he despoiled Rhaenyra by claiming her maidenhead, or that he was training her in the womanly arts to help her seduce her actual love, Sir Criston Cole. Whatever might have been the case, it was after this exile that the princess was commanded to find a husband for herself, and that was when she came across Sir Harwin for the first time as a romantic prospect. In 113 AC, Rhaenyra was commanded by her father to marry Sir Laenor Velaryon, and it is said that she tried to seduce Criston Cole to get the marriage undone, or that he asked her to run away with him because he was in love with her. Whatever it was, the White Knight rejected her eventually, and that is where Sir Harwin comes in. According to the court fool Mushroom, a spurned Rhaenyra came across Sir Harwin returning from a night of revels in the city and took him to her bed instead. He also claims to have found them abed together the next morning, but given that nothing came of this at the time, we can assume he either held his tongue or made up the story entirely, but the latter seems less likely. That is because the very next year, Harwin Strong was named Rhaenyra's sworn shield, and thereafter became a constant presence by her side, traveling to Driftmark with his princess after her marriage, and scarcely being seen without her. One can often tell who is interested in who by studying the way people treat each other, and in Westerosi society, one way to deduce hidden emotions and secret relationships is by the honors people bestow upon each other. When a knight wears a lady's favor, it isn't always because he is simply sworn to defend her. It can take on romantic overtures as well, and when a knight dedicates his victor's laurel to a lady after winning a tourney, it is typically seen as a declaration of love or intent to court the particular lady. The most famous example of this takes place when Prince Rhaegar Targaryen ignores his own wife Elia and crowns Ned Stark's sister Lyanna his Queen of Love and Beauty, a move that sparked Robert's rebellion and the downfall of the Targaryen dynasty. Sir Jorah Mormont had done the same for his ex-wife Lynese Hightower, and Sir Barristan Selmy claims if he had won the great tourney of Harrenhal, he would have crowned his love Ashara Dane as the Queen of Love and Beauty. Similarly, a lady's favor is a clear indication that the lady and the knight wearing her favor had something going on, because Rhaenyra and Laenor gave their favors to their respective champions, Harwin and Joffrey Lonmouth, respectively. It was widely assumed that these two people were their lovers, and it was these two people who would be targeted by Criston Cole, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and brand new ally to Queen Alicent Hightower. As we're sure you must have figured out by now, Criston is the vengeful ex, and Harwin is the current lover in this situation, so you can imagine just how intense their fight must have been. Though Lord Commander Cole did more damage to Sir Joffrey Lonmouth, he took out his frustrations on the larger and more durable Strong, shattering his elbow and breaking his collarbone. Because of this act, Mushroom would call Harwin Broken Bones from then on. We understand that on the tourney field, Breakbones would have had no option but to let his fists and swings talk for him. But we don't get what his thought processes were like off-field, because the same year that Rhaenyra married Laenor and gave Harwin her favor to wear, she brought forth her first son, and no prizes for guessing who he looked like. One kid having a common look is possible, so that royal court did not pay it mind and moved on with their lives. But when her second son Lucerys was also born with the brown hair and eyes and pug nose of Harwin Strong, rumors abounded that the captain of the Goldcloaks was the father of the princess's children. Septon Eustace claims that Harwin grew bold enough to attend to his son's birth alongside Laenor Velaryon, but that his boldness forced the princess to move to Dragonstone, because if the truth ever came out, she would be in deep trouble to say the least. When Rhaenyra left for her seat, Breakbones went with her, and together they created another son, Joffrey, in 117 AC. Harwin most likely served as a surrogate parent for Jace, Luke, and Joff, and Sir Laenor was known to spend his time on Driftmark away from his wife, but was not long for this world. He must have known his actions would have dire consequences, and that they would catch up with him sooner or later. The fact that he got through 3 children after what Lusamore the Lusty did to the reputation of the Iron Throne and the Kingsguard is a miracle in itself. In 120 AC, after the death of Laena Velaryon, the entire royal court convened for her funeral at Driftmark, where the beginning of the end for Breakbones' journey kicked off. Prince Aemon Targaryen, Viserys' second son by Alicent, sneaked off that night and claimed Vhagar for himself, which prompted Rhaenyra's sons to confront him. Aemon mocked his nephews as Strongs, but Luke and Joff were only 6 and 3, so Jacaerys was the only one old enough to understand the insult. The 3 boys fought with wooden swords, and Aemon began overpowering Jace, so Luke took matters into his own hands in such a way that it ensured Rhaenyra's tricks and games would cease to hold sway over the line of succession. Aemon's accusation that Rhaenyra's children were Strongs was brought before Viserys, and he commanded his son to divulge the truth of the matter. Where had he heard such a vile accusation? Aemon pointed at his brother Aegon, who only said that everyone knows, and it was after this that Harwin was dismissed as Rhaenyra's sworn shield and commanded to return to Harrenhal. He was accompanied by his father Lionel, who was ostensibly only returning home to set his son up as the heir to their cursed castle, but that curse seemingly struck when Lionel and Harwin mysteriously died in a fire, the origins of which are disputed till this date. Corlys Velaryon, Daemon Targaryen, Larys Strong are all mentioned as credible suspects, but given that all 3 men lie in the ground, underwater for Daemon and Corlys, it is impossible to deduce just what happened at Harrenhal. What we can tell you is that Harwin Strong was one of the main players whose inclusion in the story directly led to the Dance of the Dragons. He was a captain in the City Watch, the son of the Hand of the King and Master of Laws, an impressive knight in his own right, and also the father of 3 royal bastards, allegedly. Breakbones' story is as envious as it is tragic, which is why we are a little miffed that House of the Dragon did our boy dirty.
Laenor and I thank you, Commander.
Another boy, I heard.
Harwin Strong's role in House of the Dragon just doesn't feel right. Though Sir Harwin Strong was introduced quite early on in the series, his rapid rise from a random Goldcloak to the father of Rhaenyra's children doesn't feel natural. He appears towards the end of episode 3 with his brother Larys and flashes a smile towards Princess Rhaenyra that tells you he is definitely interested in her. But we don't know if she is interested in him yet. In episode 4, when Rhaenyra is out with Daemon and steals something from a street vendor in Flea Bottom, it is Sir Harwin who stops her in her tracks. He thinks she is a boy who is looting a vendor, until he realizes it is Rhaenyra and lets her go. When Daemon comes up behind them, he thanks Sir Harwin for his cooperation, and uncle and niece leave the man to his duties. Episode 5 partially delivers on Harwin's nickname when he bum rushes the mob in the throne room to secure Princess Rhaenyra from harm, and it looked like we were going to get a bit more exposition on their relationship, and then, boom! 10 years had passed, and Harwin is the daddy of all 3 of Rhaenyra's children. It felt jarring, especially when they had a chance to set him up as a potential love interest, and decided to go with another family member of his instead. In the same episode, where Harwin finds Rhaenyra in Flea Bottom, she is entertaining suitors at Storm's End, and you can clearly see that a member of House Strong is in the lineup. This Strong should have been Harwin, or they could have at least made an effort to show more interactions between them, besides cursory glances and a run-in or two. We understand that a 10-year time gap is not easy to incorporate mid-season, season, and we do appreciate the fact that Ryan and Miguel have managed to pull it off without any major hitches, but making Sir Harwin Strong commander of the Gold Cloaks and not Rhaenyra's sworn shield is a choice that drifts away from the political intrigue, and when you also consider that Laenor Velaryon too stayed in King's Landing, it takes away all the points that made understanding the implication of Rhaenyra's kids even being born in fire and blood such a scandalous affair. And even his dismissal from the position of commander came after a show-exclusive event, because in House of the Dragon, it is Harwin who breaks Criston Cole's bones, and not the other way around. You can call this the break bones moment that we have been looking for in this entire video. But to be honest, that moment was underwhelming, and what was more underwhelming was the fact that Harwin was dismissed before Laena's funeral, not after, because that makes his death so much more obvious to our eyes. And no, we are not talking about Larry Strong having been the obvious killer since the beginning. If they'd have killed Harwin after the funeral, they could have pointed the blame at Corlys, Daemon, or heck, even Otto Hightower, given the fact that he stood to gain the most from Lionel Strong's death. It would also have made episode 7 that much more awkward, because Harwin being present when his sons are outed as his sons, can you imagine seeing that anymore? Sadly, that's a no. And then there are all the strongest man in Westeros moments that we were expecting to see, which we did not end up getting at all. Sure, he took down Criston Cole pretty easily, but Cole was not armored properly, and Harwin was in his full gold cloak uniform, steel plate and all. So when it comes to the character of Harwin Strong himself, he feels very bare bones, as the showrunners seem to have been more interested in getting his major story beats across instead of investing in a proper development, which we honestly get. Who would want to focus on a character who is not even involved in your big dragon-based Civil War TV show, right? But because Harwin Strong's existence itself is so intricately tied into the narrative of the Dance of the Dragons, we would have appreciated more character exposition for him, especially with regards to his and Rhaenyra's relationship. Alas, that ship has sailed, and that bedchamber has burned and collapsed, so rest in peace, Sir Harwin Strong, you did what you could.
I will be a stranger when we meet again.
Marvelous verdict. Though it wasn't as major as a botch job that D&D did on Dorne Season 4 onwards, Sir Harwin Strong's story is the first major instance of House of the Dragon fumbling the plot. He was an incredibly interesting character who could have potentially been the Sandor Clegane of his show, but with more heart and romanticism in him. Instead, he only got proper dialogue in the 6th episode of the show, where he also ended up dying. While House of the Dragon did convey the depth of his relationship with Rhaenyra, and how they knew it was wrong but felt right, so they winged it anyway, they failed him when it comes to showing just how crucial his presence itself was to the story. Sir Harwin Strong is the first proper failure for House of the Dragon, and we dearly hope that he is the last. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.